to another meeting of the Lorain County Commissioners, broadcast exclusively on your Lorain County Community College education station. The Lorain County Commissioners cordially invite you to see the meeting live and in person every Thursday morning. The meetings are located in the Lorain County Administration Building, located at 226 Middle Avenue in downtown Elyria. The meetings start at 9:30 a.m. on most weeks. Now, enjoy the meeting.
Discuss different issues with them. It's that simple.
Is there a law in Ohio that allows the health department or the EPA to require somebody to hook onto sewer if it's within like 200 feet of their property?
I think there might be.
Okay, thanks. That's all.
Mukin? Mukin. Okay, say your name again.
Mukund Moge, I'm Assistant City Engineer for City of Elyria, 328 Broad Street.
How long have you been with the City of Elyria Engineering Department?
About 11 years.
Okay. During the time that you have served in that department, have you ever known of any command or demand by the Ohio EPA that Elyria must extend their sewers outside to the townships?
No, as far as I know.
Okay. During the time that you have been in the engineering department, has the city sought and received an opinion regarding the extension of sewers outside the city?
I don't remember, but I think there is an opinion on file.
Since the question has been raised about Ohio EPA and extending sewers outside the city, and whether the city has to do that, the City of Elyria did receive and seek an opinion from a firm of lawyers who are in Washington, D.C. and Virginia, and that letter indicated that that there's nothing in their program when they updated the sewer in 1995 that requires them to do that. And I'd like to present that to you at this time.
But these are not attorneys from the EPA. This is just a private group of attorneys?
That's correct.
Oh, I have a few more cough drops left. Thank you, Garrett. Up to.
That's being presented because the question was raised at the last meeting, and again, I think the question of whether the city extends it outside their boundaries is a policy matter for them and not for my client.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Murray. We've already had access to this wonderful opinion in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Are you through?
Yes.
Thank you, Garrett. Mr. Al Schrader.
Hi, Mukin.
Hi.
Can I call you Mukin?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Murray indicated 3 different ways that there might be sewer and water provided to this area. Is that right?
Yes.
Which one are you going to use?
It depends on our developer what he wants to use.
Depends on the developer.
Yeah.
So you haven't chosen which of those 3 methods yet?
No. He has to submit his plans.
Gentlemen, the
is it okay
court
if I stand
reporter
by?
cannot
Sure.
hear. It's difficult if you were trying
I'm
to
sorry,
transcribe.
maybe if I stand this way you can. What was the last one you could hear?
The last one I heard was the developer.
The developer hasn't chosen which of those 3 options he wants to use yet,
Right.
is that right?
Right.
Okay, do you have any idea when he might do that?
Well, once he gets his annexation, when he submits his subdivision plans, that's when he will submit his proposals.
Okay, so as far as analyzing it now, we just have to look at all 3 of those?
Correct.
Because we don't know which one is going
I
to be
don't
used.
know.
Okay. And so we don't know whose permissions you're going to need, whether it's the county or the township or whoever, right? And in fact, the material submitted earlier by Mr. Murray, if I read it correctly, indicates with regard to that permit to open streets, the Commissioner's resolution allows the county engineer to give street opening permits in the county roads and township roads. Is that right?
Yes.
And the permit application itself, however, does it not warn people that townships might have their own set of street opening permit requirements?
Yes.
Okay. And if that's the case, then the person also has to get a street opening permit from the township, right?
Yeah, probably.
Do you know if Carlisle Township has its own street opening permit requirements?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I know
That's
for...
fine. Okay, if you don't know, you don't know, that's fine. And I would like you...
could answer that.
Okay, well, let's let him testify, and you can handle your case. I want you to read just the last sentence of this opinion that Mr. Murray, that you testified to, beginning here, and I'll just tell you, it's page 6, and it goes on to page 7. It's the last full sentence. Could you start reading that, please?
Commissioner?
Excuse me.
If I could for a moment, if Mr. Schrader would like something read, my assistant engineer is not here to read from a document. If he wants to ask a question, that would be fine, but I don't see why Mr. Muget should be
Oh,
reading.
fine. Then, Mr. Schrader, would you read what your question is, please?
Have you seen this before, by the way?
I don't remember. I have seen that, but I don't exactly remember what's in there.
Okay. Do you remember the last sentence reading, although we cannot express a definite opinion on this, this is our best judgment based on the information available to us at this time?
I kind of recollect, but
Kind
I'm
of?
not sure.
Okay. And that was written in 1995, right?
Right.
So these folks had no idea about Mr. Yost's situation here.
You're probably right.
Okay. And they probably had no idea that while the city's saying Yost can't have any water and sewer without annexation, Mr. Rothgary might recommend that the city let 2 other folks that are in the township have it without annexation. They would have known that in 1995, right?
Right.
Thanks very much. That's all I had.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Schrader, do you have other information you want to present to the board? I believe, I'm sorry, are you finished, Mr. Murray?
No, I'd like to have Mr. Yost.
I apologize. I thought you were concluded.
Am I done?
I'm going to practice being a judge here.
Hey, Mr. Yost, would you kindly state your name and address?
Bob Yost, 10301 Aspen Court, Elyria.
Morning,
And
Bob.
what is your occupation?
I'm a builder-developer.
And you are the applicant for the annexation request?
That's correct.
Can you state to the board why you're asking for this annexation?
Well, the intent would be to put 12 to 14 single-family dwellings into the 7.6 acres. All the dwellings will be in the estimated cost range of $250,000 and above.
And what about the other services of the city?
I'd like to obtain all the services that are available from the city of Elyria: the police, the fire, the sewer, sanitation.
Okay, the question about water was brought up. Water for this area is serviced by rural water,
Rural water.
and it would not be from the city.
That's correct.
We indicated that there's 3 ways that you can get sanitary sewer service to your parcel, and we spoke about one of the ways was to get it from Songbird.
That's correct.
And since the last time we were here, have you had the opportunity to discuss this matter with any neighbors to this parcel?
Yeah, I spoke with the property owners directly to the north and secured a letter of intent for the possibility of an easement, depending on some considerations relative to cost and exactly how we would go about, installing the sewer.
And I'd like to present the letter to you, and the letter says, "Dear Mr. Robert Yost, my wife and I would like to thank you for stopping at our home yesterday evening and answering some of the questions we had about your plans to develop the land adjacent to our property. We also understand your need for an easement across our property in order to gain access to a sanitary sewer. We are not opposed to granting such an easement along our westerly property line as long as we can negotiate a fair and equitable consideration for the easement. We further understand your need to obtain necessary governmental approvals and permits and hope this letter will assist you in this endeavor. Now, at this time, have you decided which route you would take?
At this time, no.
If you extend the sanitary sewer from Sandpiper to your parcel, I've indicated that that would be at the developer's cost.
That's correct.
And that's all the questions I have.
There was three. There was number one.
If the sanitary, excuse me, if the sanitary sewer was extended from Sandpiper to Dewhurst, Road, who would pay for that?
I believe the city would pay for that, and then there would be an assessment.
Assessment against?
Okay.
The sewer, the expense of the sewer, to the developed property.
What about the commission was interested about people that would be along Dewhurst Road, if they wanted to tap into that?
That would be up to City of Elyria.
Okay. Would there be an assessment?
You're talking about properties outside the city?
Correct. Right.
That will be through county. It depends on agreement, how the agreement between city and county works out.
Like they did on the June 1st?
Correct.
Okay,
On the June 1st, that was part of the agreement.
okay.
Yeah, it depends on the agreement.
Now, you're looking, oh, that's okay, thanks. You're looking to build 12 to 14 homes?
Yes.
Okay, so if it remains in the township, how many homes would you be able to build? Same amount, or is there
No, probably 3.
just 3 homes?
Well, actually 2, because there is one residence there now.
Okay, so that's the issue then.
Are you intending to put in a street,
Yes,
and then the lots will be off that street?
that's correct.
With
It's
the
very,
cul-de-sac?
it would be very similar to the street that I live on, which is Aspen Court.
Okay, I'm going to ask, I'm going to wake Jim Cortez up in a minute here. Could we tie this in similar with the Vermillion project that we were working on? Is there a way that we could have run 20 and work and see if any of these issues, because it seems like to me the issue is very simple. You have an investment of 7 acres, and how are you going to maximize your investment? Can you build 14 homes, or can you build 3 homes?
Well, that's part of the process. The other part of the process is, even if we were to work out those nuances, I'm not sure that the city has demonstrated a willingness to provide sewers to this area. So while we probably could get over some of the minor hurdles, I don't know that we could get over that issue.
Okay.
Mr. Rothgary has repeatedly indicated an unwillingness by the city to sewer non-developed areas, and I hope I'm quoting that correctly, Mr. Rothgary.
Okay, thanks, Jim.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions of Mr. Yost?
Not right
I have
now.
none.
You live in the township now, don't you?
That's correct.
If you don't mind, I'm going to stand next to you so she can hear. Have you ever had any complaints that you've given to the township trustees with regard to fire service or ambulance service in the township where you live?
I've never had the necessity to call him.
Okay, so you don't know of any problems with
No.
that service in the township?
No.
And the reason you can only build 2 or 3 houses in the township is because of the septic tank requirements.
That's correct. It's then governed by the EPA.
So if you had sewer in the township, you could probably seek a zoning variance and have more houses in the township, right?
Nah, you could, but definitely the restrictions the zoning requirements for the city of Elyria and what the township requires are different. And the greater lot widths,
Okay.
sizes.
Have you asked for any variance or zoning change from the township on this particular
No, I have
parcel?
not.
Okay. And if I understand the city's testimony right, and particularly Mr. Rothgary's testimony, what he's saying is they might be willing to give sewer without annexing to a couple folks up here, but they're not willing to give sewer without annexing to you. Do you think that's a fair and equitable position for the city?
That's not up to me. I mean, that's clearly up to the city and policy that they determine.
Okay, I understand that, but do you think you're being treated fairly in that situation?
Object, I think you already answered that.
I think so, too.
I think he said it was up to them. I don't think he's answered yet whether he thinks it's fair.
I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know. I mean,
Okay, was that your dad that told you to say?
that's him.
Okay, that's all I have.
That's him.
I did what my father said to me. Thank you.
And the father is Dale Yost. Good morning, Dale. You have more, Garrett?
That's all. At this particular time, I might reserve time for just a closing statement.
Thank you. Eric Rothgary, you have a comment?
I'll just clarify one thing that Mr. Schrader said when he was talking to Mr. Yost. He talked about, asked if it was fair that we would provide it here and not over to here. What I said, again, is that I would recommend to council, and then that would be based clearly on the fact that the sewer was already extended to Mr. Yost's property and traveling right in front of those other properties. It was based on that. I certainly didn't say that we were sending sewers out to those guys without the sewer already traveling past their homes to Mr. Yost if his annexation is approved.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Schrader, I believe it's your turn.
Thank you. Let me try to be brief. I'm Attorney Al Schrader. I represent the Carlisle Township Board of Trustees. I think we ought to give you an update. We held off we continued this hearing so there could be some discussions between the township and the city and the developer. We did have a meeting. The city initially indicated they didn't really want to talk about any pending annexations, but might be willing to talk about some other things. I had sent a proposed CETA that's been used over in Clark County between the city of Springfield and Springfield Township in that county. Eric's received it. Hopefully we'll be able to sit down and talk about that in the future.
What is that called again, please?
It's called a CETA, Cooperative Economic Development Agreement, or Community Economic Development Agreement. I forget which now, but either way, it's a contract to resolve a lot of these issues. We respect the fact that the city did not, at least then, want to discuss the currently pending annexation, which is this one, an 124-acre one that's on for continuing hearing next month. But I hope and I understand from talking to Eric that maybe after the early part of November we can get together and still try to work something out. Now that said, all I'm saying that for is to bring you up to date. We did do what you asked, and we at least made some initial efforts. Given that we have a 124-acre annexation staring us in the face, I'm a little reluctant to take a high profile in this 7-acre one. What I can tell you is that in terms of general good, the way all of us interpret the most recent Ohio Supreme Court opinion is on that particular issue, you got to find in his favor. If it's 100% annexation owners, 100% of the owners say they want it, essentially the Supreme Court says you can't really look at the relative ability to provide service. I think Garrett knows that, and I think the reason he put the service issues on was you can, however, consider that under the unreasonably large section. And I'm faced with a situation where I've got to try to argue to you that a 7-acre annexation is unreasonably large. And I'm going to do that because I think in this situation, uniquely, it may well be. I think if you look at the testimony you've been given, essentially what we've heard is this will create a peninsula, but that's okay because you've created other peninsulas. Now the law clearly says we discourage that. I would suggest to you we're not bound to keep making the same mistakes over and over just because we did in the past. That's one thing you can consider under unreasonably large is the shape of the area. The size is not terribly significant. It's 7 acres. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that that's a big problem. But unreasonably large isn't just size. It also includes relative ability to provide services. Now, essentially, there's no big problem with police or fire service. Elyria can do a good job, so can the township. And the testimony even from their side was, yeah, the township does a pretty good job. We have mutual aid. We work things out. So that's, I think all of us know the real issue here is sewer. Without it, the gentleman could develop in the township. I'm sorry, with it, if he had sewer, he could develop in the township. It's not there. Water's there, fire's there, police there. We're really talking about sewer service. And although initially it looked like it was a zoning issue, 3 houses in the township and 14 or so in the city, it appears that it's still a sewer issue because you can build more houses in the township if you have sewer. That limit of 3 houses is because of the septic tanks. Even under their zoning, they allow more than 3 if you have sewer, and we'll have somebody testify to that from the township end of it. So it looks to me like what we're talking about here is a sewer issue. The courts have said that cities are allowed to pass an ordinance that basically says we will not extend sewer outside the city without annexation. But that's not what Elyria has chosen to do. Their ordinance doesn't say we won't. What it says is we'll give priority to people that live in the city. We heard testimony today that there's areas of the city, already in the city, that still don't have sewer. But Elyria keeps annexing additional land and then having folks like Mr. Yost pay the ticket to go ahead and extend the sewer out to it. The other problem with their ordinance or their position is, as I understand it, and again, this is just Eric Rothgre's ability to recommend, but nobody asked City Council to, or there was no ordinance before City Council on this Yost annexation either, so apparently Mr. Eric Rothgre's recommendations carry some weight in the city. Yost can annex without annexing, but a couple other folks can annex without annexing. I'm not sure the constitutional provisions that say that everybody within a class must be treated equally, and that's the Ohio Constitution under public utilities, and in fact the city's running a public utility, as sewer is a utility. You have to treat classes of customers equally. It seems to me the class we're talking about is people that have property in the city as opposed to those that don't. I'm not so sure, and I guess I would argue to you that they can't decide some folks can have it pursuant to an agreement they have with you dated June of 2000 or 2001 or whatever. Those folks can have it, Yost can't. I'm not sure they can make that distinction, and I would ask you to look at that very carefully, because I don't think they can do that. I think that's an unfair treatment of people that are in the same class similarly situated. It looks to me like the class is those folks that live outside the city, but in close enough proximity you could run a sewer line. How are we going to treat them? And the city's position apparently is, if you're a developer or if it's undeveloped land, we're going to treat you by telling you you got to annex to the city. If you already have a house, we might well let you have sewer without annexing. I don't think that's what that line of court cases allows. What the line of court cases allows is an ordinance that says you got to annex to have sewer, not one that says maybe if we decide that we want you to annex, you have to annex to get sewer, but if we like you, or we think it's nice to give you sewer, or if you already have a house, then we'll treat you differently. You can have it without annexing. I'm not sure that's constitutional in terms of that constitutional limitation. What we've seen is a letter from a law firm down in Washington drafted 6 years ago, apparently without any knowledge of the current situation, that maybe Yost was going to be treated differently than those other 2 folks. That's the evidence they have that what they can do is all right. I told you I would try to make this brief. I have a petition for what it is worth, and I'm not inclined to read it all, but it makes some interesting points with regard to the annexation. These folks feel annexation is not necessary to acquire sewers, pretty much what I've been trying to argue here, and goes into some other reasons that those 150 folks signed this annexation, this petition opposing annexation. And again, it's the cover letter that I think makes some arguments that they want to make. I'm not sure they're here at all to make them today, so I'm going to give to Garrett a duplicate upon which I've written some notes to myself, including that adding up those numbers is 150, and if I may approach, I'll give you the original signatures. Or rather, I'll give it to your clerk, Roxanne, who can hear what you wish. frankly, since we don't know really which route they're going to take, looking at this, they are so close to that area where they're required to provide sewer under another contract. I'm not sure that some parts of this aren't in that area. What I'm going to do is give you what I've marked as Exhibit A, which is a March 2, 1998 letter from then Mayor Keyes to Ken Carney, your engineer, outlining the highway use permit application for the Southeast Interceptor sewer, and it talks about land, all of it in Township of Carlisle, some on Chestnut Ridge, some on East River, some in Grafton, on Grafton Road in Carlisle Township, some on West River. Anyway, I have that. I'm going to submit that to you. Again, those particular permits, and this is attached as Exhibit B, said permits are conditioned upon authorization of the City of Elyria to allow designated areas of Carlisle Township as outlined in the attached map as A and B to tie into said sewer lines upon payment of city fees as set forth in written agreement between the City of Elyria and the County of Lorain Commissioners. Again, I don't know which one they're using. I ask, they don't know which route. I think at least one of them may already be in that area. So, Garrett, there's your copy of that, and similarly, as usual, I have only one copy of this designated area map, and so I'm going to show that to Garrett, and then with his approval, let you look at that. Unfortunately, I don't. Maybe what I'll do is hang on to this and just make a copy later so it's fair. Let me give you this. Garrett, you looked at Exhibit A? Or at least had a chance to glance at it?
Yeah, I think Exhibit A is a part of the June 1, 2000 agreement.
Very good. To move it along, I'd like to have the zoning inspector come up so he can testify that as to the zoning and what effect sewers would have on that and so on. You were sworn, were you not?
Yes.
Just go ahead and make a statement rather than ask.
Would you
Gary
repeat
Crane.
your name? Thank you.
111 Haynes Street, Elyria. I'm zoning inspector, Carlisle Township. We have zoning that's RI-2, which allows 70-foot lots in the township if you have sanitary sewers, 7,800 square feet minimums. The setbacks are 30 foot from the right-of-way and a minimum of 16 on the side yards. And it's basically the same as what the City of Elyria has. Mr. Murray has another client that he's representing in the township to request a zoning change to those lots on Hope Court at this time, so he's aware that we do have lots that are that size.
Thank you. Do you have questions or comments?
And also the Jim Dzersky, and I'm going to screw up your name and I apologize, but if you'd like to, you're with the Sheriff's Office, maybe you could explain the services the Sheriff provides. And again, just say what you want to say instead of me asking you questions.
Morning. Captain Jim Drozdowski, Lorain County Sheriff's Department.
Good morning, Captain.
Regarding the area of annexation, this is an area we currently patrol and through Carlisle Township. We do have mutual aid with Elyria. We do have a lot of the same services that Elyria does provide. Although courts are one of our primary concerns, road patrol is just as equal as far as courts. We don't have to worry too much about boundary situations. Given under the Ohio Revised Code, we have jurisdiction throughout the entire county. So we do run into a situation where a property may be in a city or in a township. If we respond to it, or when we respond to it, we can deal with it at that time. We can choose either to handle the situation or refer it if it is in the city. Our manpower, I feel our manpower is adequate to handle that. That's one of our areas that not only do we have road patrol up in that area continually because of the population, we also have designated community policing officers. As Mr. Rothgary said, it's one of the safer areas in the county, and that I don't believe there's any services that the city of Elyria could provide as far as police protection that we haven't had or can in the future. Thank you.
Captain.
I just had,
Question, Mr. Murray?
Jim, you don't patrol this area this area in here?
The section inside the city, not on a normal course.
Okay. I think that, given the proximity of that other areas that are all in the city, that the city of Elyria Police Department can provide more coverage to that area than you can. Seeing that it is a large part of that is in the city of Elyria.
I don't believe that they'd cover it any more than we would. We're always up in this area due to the fact of the township being around there. We have continual patrol.
How many officers do you have on patrol at night?
Depending on the shift in the day, on the average, probably 8 to 9 officers on an afternoon shift, probably 8 to 9 on a night shift, not including our community policing officers, which work various shifts, which is another 5 officers.
And that covers the entire
Right, what we do...
how many townships do you
We've got
cover?
18 townships. We break it up into districts. The district that this falls into is only Carlisle and LaGrange Township. We average 2 to 3 cars up in that area continually.
Okay. All right, that's all I have.
Thank you, Captain. Mr. Murray?
And Jim Wright, trustee, has a...
Good morning, Jim Wright, trustee, Carlisle Township.
Good morning.
This annexation and others is basically over sewers. And Carlisle Township in the past has passed a resolution to enable Lorco to be our representative in sewer issues in the township. And what I would like to do is I would like to encourage the commissioners to allow Lorco to work with you and the commissioners so that we can not have to be confronted with these issues so often in the future. Thank you.
Jim, do you know who I am?
Garrett Murray. At least you look like him anyway.
There could
Not in
only be
disguise
one.
now.
Jim, I wanted to ask you, has Carlisle Township passed a resolution in opposition to land being annexed to the city of Elyria?
I don't think we've passed a resolution to that fact.
Did you pass a resolution to hire counsel to oppose this annexation?
Yes, we did.
Is it your policy to oppose annexations of land from Carlisle Township?
Absolutely.
So you don't want to give up any land?
Would you?
I'm asking you.
No, sir.
So the city doesn't want to give sewers unless they have the land, and you don't want to give up the land either?
That's correct.
And that's your main objection to this annexation is the fact that you don't want to lose the land?
That's right.
Thank you. Let me ask you one other question. Does Carlisle Township have any plan in the works to encourage development of this particular area?
We are rather proactive township to encourage development.
In this particular area?
In this particular area, yes, we would encourage development in the area, provided we had Lorco to provide the infrastructure.
And at this point, you don't have that?
That's absolutely true.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I told you that we would be short. Again, we think, as strange as it may sound, unreasonably large applies here. The Court of Appeals for the 9th District, which is our Court of Appeals, has said it's not just size. On size, we probably lose this one hands down. But unreasonably large means more than that. The Court of Appeals has said what it means is geographic character and shape as well as size. Well, clearly the creation of peninsulas isn't a good thing. It has created some confusion. The police and fire services have worked together and continue to work together to try to avoid that, and that's what they should do. But why create problems for them to begin with? And why be doomed to keep making the same mistakes in regard to that shape type of issue? Second, you can consider the relative ability to provide services. Now, the township has indicated to you, although they support the LORCO, they don't have a line in any close proximity. Clearly the city does. So then you begin to look at why can't the city provide sewer service? And what the city seems to be saying is, we'll provide it for some folks, but not for others that live outside the city. We don't think they can do that, and if you permit me to, I'll try to get a brief in on that, but there is a case in Ohio that has said that a city can, as long as they treat classes of customers under their utility authority alike, they could say that they're going to treat in-city people different than out-of-city people. But that case clearly says and upholds a city ordinance that said you can't have any sewer outside the city without annexing. Not what we've heard today. We'll let some have it, but not others. We think that's a problem. Again, I don't want to say too much negative about the city because I'm hoping we can resolve some of these issues by negotiating. That's one reason you've seen a low profile today and a relatively short presentation. So that's where we're at. We think that the city ought to provide sewer service here so that folks like Mr. Yost can develop. This was a difficult one to fight. Mr. Yost lives in our township. I don't want to attack him particularly. I appreciate what his father had to say and so on. But we think this is not a good annexation because it's solely in order to get sewer that they ought to have to begin with. Because if we really care about developing this area of Ohio and this county, then we ought to provide those services so people can develop and folks can have jobs and homes and all the other benefits of growth, of positive growth. Thanks for your time and attention. I appreciate it. That's pretty much the end of our case, and I think that's what the trustees had asked me to do, and I've done my best to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schrader. Mr. Murray, you have a comment?
Yeah, just a few comments. One, if you read that opinion by that firm down in Virginia and Washington regarding the fact that there was nothing in the plan that was presented to Ohio EPA that the city could not extend service, that the city could not extend their sanitary sewer outside the city. On one of those pages, one of the reasons that they gave was that the city of Elyria, in improving on their plant, they paid out of their own city money for the upgrade of that plant out there more than what was required by the Ohio EPA. And on that, that's one of the reasons, because they use their own money. Secondly, the question about whether it's constitutional is, I'm listening to Mr. Schrader, is just opinion. There are no citations on it, so that might be just a question of opinion. I would like you to take into consideration that the petition that was presented by those signatures was not by an affidavit. It was just, I think that the code allows people to present statements to the commissioners, to cross-examine witnesses, and to prepare and present affidavits for consideration. We think that we have complied with the requirements of section of the Ohio Revised Code. One other question I just wanted to mention, as far as whether or not a parcel is unreasonably large, there's three tests: the geographic character, shape, and size of the territory to be annexed, and in relation to the territory to which it will be annexed. And that's why I presented to you how it lies as far as the property that's already developed. where the corporate line is, that it's 456 feet approximately from the corporate line along East River. Secondly, the ability of the annexing city to provide necessary municipal services. There's no question here that the city of Elyria can more than adequately provide for those services. And then the last test for unreasonably large is the effect on the remaining ownership territory if annexation is permitted. But that is, the effect is if the territory sought to be annexed is so great a portion of the township's tax base that the annexation would render the remaining township incapable of supporting itself, then one might reasonably conclude that the annexation is unreasonably large. So that's what that section, the effect on the remaining ownership of the territory. And in this particular case, I don't think that's the case. There's been no testimony to that effect. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. It's 5 minutes after 12. We've been at this for an hour and a half. At this time, I would ask if there's anybody else in the audience who would like to make a statement regarding this matter. Mr. Mahoney from Rural Water. Good morning, Jim.
My name is Tim Mahoney, M-A-H-O-N-E-Y. I am the General Manager for Rural Lorain County Water Authority, and now it is good afternoon, Commissioners. I am neither speaking in favor of nor in opposition of annexation of the area in question. Rather, I am here to speak about water service to the area. The area is and has been part of the exclusive Rural Lorain County Water Authority service area since 1974, when it was so ordered by the Lorain County Court of Common Pleas. All of the area's water needs have been met by rural water. Facilities have been in place for many years to serve the anticipated increased water demands in Carlisle Township. Please be reminded that rural water is not just some ma and pa water company. Rural water has plenty of water available. Our current capacity is 24.5 million gallons a day, and we're now selling about 8.5 million gallons a day. We have a 16-inch main that goes right across the front of that property with a great deal of pressure. The Rural Water Avon Lake Partnership, again, is not some ma and pa water company. We serve directly or indirectly 150,000 people, making us the largest water distribution system in Ohio between Cleveland and Toledo. Please allow me to correct a statement that I made earlier. I said that I was here to speak neither in favor of nor in opposition to annexation. However, if the Lorain County Commissioners cannot assure us that the area will remain part of the rural water service area, then we are strongly opposed to the annexation. And it would, as it would not be in the best interest of the area, any attempt to serve water in this area would be deemed actionable by our board of directors. Now, going back to what Mr. Yost said earlier, it is his intent for rural water to serve the water in this area, but I caution him and the board, as to quote Mr. Rothgary, council is king. Now, if it is in the city, council determines who serves the water there, not the property owner. I also want to caution the engineering department, who talks about running a water line on road right-of-way to this proposed annexed area, as well as to Dewhurst. There is a 16-inch water main existing in that right-of-way. The Ohio EPA calls for both a vertical and a horizontal separation of water and sewer lines. We need to make sure that that separation can be maintained. Also, just around the corner from this, on Dewhurst, we serve the water. The area was annexed into the city. We continue to serve the water, and the city uses our water meter readings for their billing purposes. And we would be pleased to allow that to continue. We have always had a cooperative spirit, and we would like for that to continue. And I would be pleased to answer any questions that you may have. Otherwise, I thank you for your time.
Well, is Rural Water serving the Robin Park subdivision?
No, we're not.
Are you serving the area where's Robin Park number 7, which is south of there? There's number 6 is,
Just north of the annexation?
yeah, just
West?
north of the annexation.
We have a water line that goes through there, and I believe it was, Bob, you made the statement, there's a house there now. We do serve them. Those two properties that are in question here, between this proposed annexed area and Robin Park, those two homes, we do serve those two, yes.
But you don't serve the property north of that, which is one of the Robin Park subdivisions.
No, but we do go north of that, on up towards Aspen Court, the area along East River Road.
To the
Yes,
west.
we do serve those.
Okay.
It's in the township.
That is in the township, correct.
What about the city homes that don't have sewers on East River? Do you service them for water? If you go west of Sandpiper?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So you're
I don't know about the homes that are in the city that were recently built. I don't know whether they bought taps from us, or if I don't know if any of those front onto East River Road. Anything that fronts onto East River Road, we do serve, Mr. Moore.
These are all fronting East River Road.
Yes.
Those are 8 homes.
Right.
Thank you, Tim.
Yes, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Eric?
Yeah, we don't, I guess I said council is king, but I guess the common police court is somehow above that king. And we have no intention of trying to change the contract area that they have now. They provide a great service as well as we do. In fact, they've bailed us out in situations before, and again, if it's in the contract area for Rural Water Authority, I don't see why it would change.
Thank you, Eric. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this annexation proposal that's before the commissioners at this point in time? The clerk has noted that we have a 90-day window for approval or denial of the petition, and that drop dead date would be November 14th of 2001. And the last board meeting prior to that on which we could take action would be November the 8th. Mr. Ennis, do you have any comments for the board? Any?
I feel compelled to remind the Board of Commissioners of a similar circumstance. First of all, I would mention that I agree with Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Yost has an outstanding reputation as far as working with governmental entities. So I don't want my comments to reflect upon him, but nevertheless, he has to deal with some of the history that his other brethren leave us with. A few years ago, very, very similar situation. Another developer came in here, sought an annexation of property. We had an ordinance from the city of Elyria saying that sewer services would be provided. A number of homes, same types of thing. Easements would be obtained, right-of-ways would be used. Very, very similar fact situation. Homes were built, and lo and behold, the negotiations for these easements fell through, and the city of Elyria was not able to provide sewers to that area. And if you recall, we had a rain, and we had dozens of homes that flooded out. The city of Elyria and that developer threw up their hands and said it wasn't their fault. The township and the county ended up getting sued, and although we successfully defended that lawsuit, we were sued for what happened there. I would submit that that was not for the general good of that territory. We have a very similar situation here. So what I'm saying is I think there is a factual question here as to whether or not the city of Elyria, when it does have to still obtain easements in the future, or you do have to get right-of-ways through another entity, there is still a factual question here as to whether or not they can provide the services that they're saying they can provide. And I think that's a question that the commissioners need to consider in light of the past history in that immediate vicinity. Secondly, out of those situations, we had a number of litigation issues. And the policy of the county was developed regarding these right-of-ways. And I can assure the developer, and I want you to know that now, that the policy of the county is if you're going to use our right-of-way, you're going to use up our space where sewers can be put, it is a condition of the county that you will allow sewer access to those people that reasonably need that access, and that is not negotiable. That's the policy of the county, it's the policy of the engineer. So those are factors that we need to consider. I get a little hot about this because, like I said, the city or the county and the township ended up getting sued for everything that went on, and we had dozens of people whose homes were flooded out. And I think the commissioners need to make sure that doesn't happen again. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Ennis. Mr. Murray, you have further comment?
Yeah, I really don't think that a bad experience that you had with one developer should be visited on my client, especially when the opening remarks was that the Yost family has a very good reputation as a builder in this area, and they've been building for maybe some 40 years. So I think a bad experience with one developer should be visited on ours. I understand, like Elyria, the county commissioners, or the county has a policy regarding issuing of rights permits to come within the road right away, as far as extending sewer services to people in the area. So it seems like everyone has a policy.
Yes, and how do we mesh these policies? Mr. Schrader.
Well, I certainly can't answer that question. How you mesh them is going to be up to you, and I guess you have 90 days to make that decision. One thing I did want to say is that on behalf of the township, I was involved in some of that litigation trying to defend the township. I didn't raise it, quite frankly, because it was dismissed subject to being refiled within a year, and that year hasn't run yet, so I wasn't going to raise that issue. I would suggest to you, though, that what we're talking about doesn't reflect on this developer. What we're talking about are the facts of life when it relates to cities and townships and counties and how we provide sewer and those kinds of things. I was very nice to Mr. Yost. We do think he's a good developer. We feel sorry that he's kind of caught in this fight between governments. But the fact remains, he doesn't control whether those easements are granted. He doesn't control whether he gets those street opening permits. And because he doesn't control it, everything that Gerald Innes said, I think, is very important and ought to be considered by the commissioners. Again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Schrader. Mr. Rothger, you want to talk again?
I just have to get a clarification here from Mr. Ennis. Are we referring to a storm sewer at Robin Park? Is that what you're referring to? I think it should be made clear to everybody here that a storm sewer and a sanitary sewer are two completely different things. There would not be people living in homes without a sanitary sewer connection. The storm sewer, people were allowed to move in there with the temporary storm sewer that allowed the water to go to a ditch, I believe in the rear of or to the south part of the property. Mr. Muge could correct me, but I believe there was a 20 or 25-year rain event or something what they refer to that caused it. But a storm sewer and a sanitary sewer are two absolutely different things.
Well, the issue the point I was trying to make is that the city passed an ordinance saying it could provide services, and in fact that turned out to not be accurate. So the mere fact that the city has now passed an ordinance, I don't think resolves the issue totally, and there still are some factual things for the commissioners to consider as to whether or not the city can in fact provide these services, and I think those facts need to be reviewed by the commissioners. And the reason I asked you whether you had authority, Eric, is like I said, we've dealt with cities, and we've learned the lesson that we need to have an ordinance before we have any official action. And it would be nice. I don't think there is definitive evidence that the city can provide these services unless we have an ordinance from the city saying they will allow these kinds.
If I may, Mr. Ennis, the city or council wouldn't even contemplate an ordinance unless it was requested by those particular two property owners to be able to tie in. And as Mr. Yost has said, he has other options and hasn't chosen which one of those options he's going to take. And with all due respect, I don't think that it has a bearing on an annexation hearing.
Well, I think that some of these things do have a bearing on what we hear, though. And I will say this. I don't know when Mr. Yost is going to determine which course of action is best for him. But I think there are some other issues here about bigger issues, perhaps. Well, how about some of the other area is going to be sewered or not sewered? And I think that I heard someone ask about plans for economic development for this area. What are the plans for the rest of this area? I think that that's a proper consideration for the commissioners to at least be made aware of while we're discussing this issue. Mr. Murray?
Oh,
I can't imagine why that would have happened.
What I was going to say was that, of course, as part of the filing of the petition for annexation, the City of Elyria has passed a resolution, which is part of your transcript, indicates that they will provide services to this area, and one of those services is sanitary sewer.
I appreciate that, but I guess that I'd like to know how they're going to provide it. And there were 3 different options, and...
Well, the 3 different options means that it's clear that my client can receive sanitary sewer service. Now, if you're saying that if the developer or the city applies for a permit to put sanitary sewers down East River Road, does that mean that unless they spell out all who is going to get sanitary permits, that would be denied?
I don't know, but I'll respond in this fashion. I believe that there is a state law that says if there's a sewer that passes by within 200 feet of your property, and if the health district enforces it, you shall tap in. I don't know how, if in fact a public sewer would come down this street past those 2 properties that you've talked about, and even if the developer installs this sewer, it becomes a public sewer because it would be dedicated to public use. It's not a private sewer anymore. So it sounds rather magnanimous that the city would allow this tap in. It seems to me if the sewer comes down there, that in fact the health department could issue an order to those people that they would have to tap in. And I'm not an attorney, but it would seem to me that that would be an issue.
Sure.
At this point in time, I think everybody stated that we have 3 options in which to receive a sewer. Clearly, my intent would be, as I secured a letter of intent with an easement with the people to the north, to take the sewer that direction with the approval of the City of Elyria, which in discussion has been, I'm not going to say approved, but is very feasible to do. You know, and I guess I'm going to go back to some of the other things I heard, how you know, our reputation and what we stand for and how long my dad and I have been in business. Clearly, to bring up a past issue of an individual or any other developer that hasn't done their part or tarnished the situation that's set before me, I am caught in the middle. And I do this for a living, okay? One of the things that we struggle with every day is it seems like we're the most regulated and predetermined or self-determined by other people industries that there is out there. I mean, clearly, whether you determine whether this is for the good of the area, my street is a wonderful street. I know a million people, not a million, a lot of people that would love to live on Aspen Court or Briarwood. I am trying to recreate that position. First question people ask me when they come to buy a home isn't whether it's in the township or the city, it's what school district is it in. That's the first thing they want to know. They don't care whether it's Carlisle Township or the City of Elyria. It's just not something that matters to them. Thank you.
Your point is well taken, and this area is in Midview School District, correct?
That's correct.
And it will not change with these territories annexed to the city or not?
That's correct.
It'll still be in Midview School District. Well, do you have any comments or questions, Commissioner Moore?
According to the services that was provided, you guys didn't have any stormwater management in there, correct? Mr. Raffieri? No, I'm just asking. In that agreement? It was just sewers and services. There was nothing there on stormwater management, was there?
You're asking me?
Yeah. In that agreement, I'm just asking,
I'm not sure what that agreement says, but
was it in there, Garrett, Mr. Murray?
Which agreement are we talking about?
Council provides services?
When council provided services, was it just council provided services that vague, and then basically or did they identify what services they could provide?
Which is the resolution say?
On the city council resolution. I just had 3 questions, that was one of them.
Yeah, the services we provide is the sanitary sewer water service. Those are services we provide. The reason is we treat those sanitary sewer and water at our plant, and that's what we provide to the citizens. Stormwater is a kind of different story. It goes through whatever existing drainage pattern is there. If it goes to river, it goes to river. See, we do not divert it to the city. The way it goes, that's the way it goes.
Okay, so the services that were identified in the resolution is basically just water?
Water, sanitary sewer, police, and safety services. Sanitation.
Thank you. I was going to ask Mr. Ennis, when you were talking earlier regarding the non-negotiable, when you were saying what's non-negotiable when you were talking earlier? Are you talking about
we go through
property
this
lines?
issue. We've gone through the issue of should they elect a route that would require to go through the county or township right of way. The initial representation is that the city would consider allowing certain properties to tie in. Our position is that if they're going to put a sewer in the right-of-way and thereby use up the space that the county would use or any other entity would use to put a sewer in there, that they have to allow reasonable access by any entity. If they're going to put a sewer in our right-of-way, we have a right to attach reasonable conditions to that. Okay, if they're going to use our right-of-way. A reasonable condition is that they allow reasonable access to the property owners in that area so that the property owners aren't isolated and don't have any ability to have a sewer other than, resurrecting their own private sewer line. So what we developed out of the previous litigation and negotiation that followed that was that if another entity is going to use the county right-of-way to put a sewer in it, they must agree to allow, again, reasonable access to landowners that might use that property. And that doesn't necessarily mean just existing development. It might also mean undeveloped. We have not taken the position that that means everybody in the township has to have access to that sewer, but it's not a developed, undeveloped issue.
So like the definition of reasonable, that's where everyone ends up in court, I take it?
Well, I mean, what I'm suggesting is that this probably should have been negotiated
before.
And the only reason I stated it on the record is so that, sometime later on, like we had before, things happen and people are up here in front of us asking us what went wrong. We have it on the record that we stated that's going to be the conditions, and that concern is out there so that people aren't complaining to us about. Again, Mr. Yost has a fine reputation, and he's absolutely right. He's caught in the middle of something, but unfortunately, we have to do a little CYA here, and I wanted to get something on the record that is protecting the county interests here.
CY. Hi. Okay. If they run the sewer line down up to this point, reasonable are you saying then if we can continue to the corner of Dewhurst and East, would that be considered reasonable, and then they wouldn't have to annex in if they wanted to tap into sewers? Is that what your statement could be?
Well, if they can get the easements, and I haven't been looking at the maps, that's why, again, I say it's up to the commissioners to to, I'm just urging you to look at the facts and make sure that you're satisfied this
Just by
can
bringing
happen.
that up, that's what...
They don't have to go through the county,
Then we're out of...
they don't have to go through the county lines, that's fine, but I heard that their other easements are
They're not
negotiable.
sealed. Yeah, they're negotiating right
And
now.
that's the same scenario that we ran into before again. So I'm just saying, you have to feel comfortable that you think this is going to happen. And that's a factual matter for you to consider. And the point I was saying is that an ordinance from the city would make it open and shut. And without that ordinance, you just at least need to evaluate whether you think there's sufficient proof to you that they can provide these services.
Where's that letter from the easement? Is that in here?
She didn't put it
What was the
in
date,
there.
Mr. Murray, on that letter for the easement that the Yost got?
Yes, it was Tuesday.
It was Tuesday? October 9th?
Yep.
You just got the letter of intent, basically. So what you're talking about, if you would have had an agreement, really all it is a financial agreement that you're waiting on, correct? Whether or not, that's all it is, dollar amount, whether or not, Kate, can you come through my property? How much money do I want, correct?
Or the possibility of a piece of my property behind them, a
Right.
certain portion.
Exactly. So if you would have had something like this, that would probably take away any doubt.
Probably.
Right. Clearly, the understanding between that individual and myself, is there's going to be some sort of monetary consideration, and the comment from them was, you know, we would love to have 20, 25 feet more property on the back of our lot.
Okay.
Okay? So, you know, and
Well, let me ask you, are you still in wheel deal mode with these people, or what? I mean...
Well, I talked to them over the weekend, and then they presented that to me on Tuesday night, yeah, and clearly it indicates there that the negotiation for consideration is there.
But on August 16th, when you came before us, this was one of the options.
That's correct, but at that time, I had not talked to those individuals. I had talked to just the city of Elyria, the engineering department, the feasibility of tying to the sewer.
You could do it.
Yes, that it could be done.
Is that sewer on that street size so that it can take the flow from this?
Yes, it is. The manhole's directly on the westerly boundary. It's straight away and across the street
Okay.
from their property.
All right.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Right on the bird.
Mr. Ennis, this property is not in the property that we negotiated with the city for sewer service, is
it's
it?
correct. It's in the city of Elyria.
No, that was not my question, though.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sorry. We have an agreement with the city of Elyria to extend their sewer absent annexation to some specific areas. And I'm just clarifying, this is not in that area?
I don't believe it is, and I believe that was...
I'm sorry. No, it is not. It is not in
Okay.
that area.
Thank you. The agreement that we have with the city to extend their sewer service, someplace on East River, there's already a tap in down here. But this is not in the area that they agreed to service.
Okay.
Okay.
How long do you think it will take to find an, I guess the word here is equitable consideration? How much time do you think it will take to negotiate?
The arrangement basically I left with the customer is that I could see him as early as this weekend or as late as, 12 months from now. I wasn't predicated on whether the annexation, if I'm not given the annexation, I clearly don't need the easement.
But a letter of intent, you could say, if the annexation comes through, this is what our deal would be.
That's correct. I would negotiate, I would probably,
make a few people feel comfortable.
right, I would probably consider negotiating that consideration pretty quick. Yeah, it would happen relatively fast.
Then this would no longer be an issue. It'd just be coming through here.
A storm drainage, that's not a problem for this property?
Stormwater management's not an issue?
Where's the stormwater going to go?
Currently, there is a storm, there's a catch basin on the, and I don't know exactly where, on the north side of the road that discharges down to a ravine that's probably, I'm going to say every bit of 15, 20 feet directly to the river.
And that's not a problem then?
Well, I haven't engineered all that to know that, the actual floodplain and all that kind of stuff and the amount of runoff I'll have, but that'll have to be considered.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, because on this petition, they talk about 30 new homes when they did the petition for 150 signatures. And we're only talking 13 homes now. That sounds like to me.
Mr. Yost, in the past, Dale Yost specifically, when you had an issue about development in Carlisle Township, you went to the trustees and you discussed that with them before you proceeded. Have you had discussion with Carlisle Township trustees about this particular parcel?
I have not.
Either of you?
No, I have not.
We haven't, but in the past, what we've done is turn around and had it annexed and then met with the people to turn around and see what they wanted. Most of it is over taxes because the amount of money they would get in taxes and so forth. And we'd be willing, my son would be willing to turn around and negotiate something with them upon getting it annexed.
I agree.
Thank you, because that had been your past procedure. I didn't know if it came before or afterwards, but in view of the fact that there would be some land taken from the township, you had been
We have had conversation with Mr. Schrader to that effect.
You have had?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, are you going to be in town on November the 8th?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. I'm not gonna be, am I?
Are you, or aren't
I'm
you?
not.
Oh, you're not?
I'm not. What's the week before that?
What's the week before October the 8th, or excuse me,
Well,
November
if
the
you-
8th?
If it's only gonna take you, if you made a cell phone call, you could probably have an answer, correct?
Well, but you're talking about a document in writing.
Oh, okay. Well, today's the...
That'd be November 1st. The week prior would be the 1st.
Next Thursday.
Well, I don't think that that's sufficient time to get a document in writing. I think, do you?
Well, they could get that in a week. I think they've been waiting long enough. You could get that letter in a week, couldn't you?
Sure do my best to get it.
And then what else are we waiting on? And I think you've answered, that would answer that question, correct? I'm trying to think what other outstanding issues would there be. Is there going to be all 3 board members?
I don't know. I really don't know. I'd prefer to continue it for 2 weeks. You're going to be here. What is 2 weeks?
25th of October.
Of October. What else do we have that day?
We have a continued public hearing also on annexation in Lorain Township for 58 acres that day.
Well, 58 acres is on October what?
25th at 10:30.
And then what's the, when are we doing the other?
And next week, we're having another one on Brownhill to Vermillion.
What's the week after? I'm sorry, I kind of...
The week after 25th? So November 1st. I have nothing scheduled.
Are you going to be?
I'll be in November 1st.
You're not going to do much developing right now because of the weather, I would presume, so it wouldn't be a hindrance to you if we would continue our hearing until November the 1st. Is that agreeable?
Yes.
Are you going to continue the hearing?
I don't know. I'm just talking. We've got a date.
That was the main thing.
Again, we have a couple of options.
What option do we have?
You could continue the hearing again. At a minimum, it sounds that you at least want to give him a period of time to submit further information on that agreement. Or you can close the hearing and just vote at some point. Our policy has been to try and do that vote within 90 days unless both parties will agree to give us a little bit longer.
I would prefer to continue the hearing. I don't want to
Okay.
go through all this again. I don't think you do either.
We're still
But,
within 90 days.
excuse me? Yes, we are. I would like
Well within 90 days.
to see the documentation that you're talking about. If that is not an avenue, then I think we need to discuss some other options. Is that agreeable?
Oh, I see, because if we close the hearing,
We're not going to take any more testimony. We're not going to have any discussion. We're just going to come and say, yes, we do, or no, we don't. I'd prefer to continue the hearing. I will move that we continue the hearing until November the 1st. What is the appropriate time, Roxanne? 10:30? Is that agreeable with you?
Yes.
11/1 at 10:30? Is that all right?
My birthday, actually, and I'll be here.
we'll get cards for you.
We have a cake for you.
We can have...
Yeah, I bet you will.
We can have cake or something afterwards. And I would just like to say, I would just like to make this comment. You know, we're going to make all these findings of facts and everything else, but I would like to say, in response to some of the things that Mr. Murray said, the annexation goes with the land regardless of who the landowner is, just like zoning goes with the land. So I think that when we find for the general good of the territory, it's irrespective of who owns the land, because whoever, and by the way, my experience with both the Yosts has been a positive experience in my 35-plus years in elective service. But they could sell that land to another developer. So the annexation goes with the land. I just want to make that one little clarification. Did we moved? I moved and David seconded.
Any more discussion?
Second.
Did you?
No,
Okay,
he did
thank
not.
you. Well, maybe that's why we didn't vote.
Right, I was waiting to hear if that was agreeable.
Okay, it's agreeable to both parties?
It was, yes.
All right. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll then, please?
To get on tape. Mrs. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attendance this morning. I appreciate it. I move we go back into executive session for the purposes that were originally outlined that we did not conclude.
Mrs. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.